Ever since the first mention of giant squids from King Sverre Sigurdsson in 1180, krakens have developed into a terrifying force of nature that causes awe and wonder in the minds of any audience. From appearing in books like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, movies like Pirates of the Caribbean, or games like Sea of Thieves, it has become a staple of seafaring fantasy that has become both an expected returning character for seafaring fantasy, and at the same time, one that never gets old. So just like every other fantasy storytelling, Dungeons & Dragons wanted a piece of the action for their tabletop game, creating their own history, lore, and associated abilities for their monstrous kraken. But how true to historical kraken lore is it? How much creative liberties have they taken? And are there other parts of kraken lore that could prove unique in our own homebrews and storytelling universes? So, as we explore the historical significance of the Titanous squid, I'm sure you'll find plenty of inspiration for your own fantasy storytelling. Looking at the stat block provided for D&D 5th edition, we find things that you might expect to find in a giant octopus-like creature. Fast swimming speed, biting and tentacle attacks, an ink cloud, and being a siege monster dealing double damage to objects and structures, like a wooden sailing ship. But there were a few things that did confuse me at first, like being able to speak languages associated with heaven and hell, as well as telepathy. And then immunity from lightning with lightning attacks was also something I never remembered from watching the Discovery Channel or similar faux documentaries. This is also coupled with controlling the weather and creating strong currents in its lair actions. And perhaps the most confusing bit of information was in their descriptive lore, enforcing their will on mortals, creating thralls and servants in the form of sea spawns, deep scions, or kraken priests, each having their own level of autonomy and control from their Stockholm fish daddy. But as I looked into historically accurate kraken lore, I couldn't find mention of these pieces anywhere. For 800 years, tales of the kraken were all over the place. The only through line was giant sea creature that had a palate for ships and sailors. Its name actually derived from the Norwegian word krak for crooked tree, which they used for drags or anchors for small boats. But the descriptions of the kraken were much more vague at first, just described as a massive fish with many horns or many limbs. To some, they actually thought it was a giant sea crab, lobster, or starfish, even a large whale having its turn in the ring for a time. Descriptions even depicting more similar to Scylla from Greek and Roman mythology. Whatever it was said that the only warning sign you had before you were taken was millions of fish rising to the surface, trying to escape the beast themselves. Then, with the twisting limbs of the giant fish below, a whirlpool would drag you down into the abyss. With many sightings of beached giant squid carcasses and sucker scars seen on the mouths of sperm whales in the 1400s, however, the tentacled beast became the more popular theory, but definitely still not the only one. A writer named Pontoppidan wrote of his theories of the tentacles being more like tree branches, not having 8 individual appendages, but having many tentacles split off into more branched tentacles like a fractal, taking inspiration from the Medusa's head starfish, even calling it a young kraken. Though when the art world got a hold of it, it wouldn't be surprising to see it have additional spikes or horns to make it a little bit more menacing. But it could have originated from the tusk of the swine whale or bearded whale that the myth started out with. It wasn't until the 19th century when Western culture solidified the giant squid as an archetypal kraken. This was when literary influences like Victor Hugo, Jules Verne, and Alfred Tennyson made their mark. Victor Hugo specifically describing the tentacles of the kraken as also being covered with teeth-like barbed hooks that pierced and sucked the blood from its victims. But that's not to say the evolution of the kraken is even close to being done either, as it continues to evolve in the minds of creative people. In the movie Clash of the Titans, the kraken is given much more of a humanoid shape. In movies like King Kong, it's just one of many titans or kaiju. We even get a space kraken in games like Kid Icarus. Perfect vibe for your Spelljammer campaigns, which leads us back to our little D&D version of the beast with slaves and lightning abilities. Still something I couldn't find across all of my research. No historical hints to where they might have got these from. Of course, it's fantasy, mystical conjecture, and creative liberty at its heart. As we have seen, krakens can be a variety of different things, but definitely not that different, right? It wasn't until I stumbled into the mythos of Cthulhu where I saw similarities. Cthulhu being a cosmic and ancient godlike entity created by H.P. Lovecraft. There you have a multitude of mindless thralls and even control of storms. If you ask me, with 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons not having a Cthulhu monster, this may have been the creative compromise. Their Kraken could fit the role of both. But going even deeper, the Kraken itself does appear in Cthulhu mythos, renamed as Cthyla, or the Secret One. Being a great old one like Cthulhu, she was destined to give birth to a new god upon Cthulhu's death. Now I could go into a bunch of other Cthulhu lore, but I think we can leave that for another video. But I do want to be clear that D&D's version of the Kraken isn't wrong, just as the humanoid Kraken from the movies or the bearded whale from yesteryear, though I am sure that there are a plethora of Reddit threads that will tell you otherwise. The great thing about myth, in my opinion, is that it is flexible enough to make the fantasy our own. The most important question being, what is the Kraken to you? So, for the purposes of this video, we are going to do just that. And why not make our own version of the Kraken? Something that we are inspired from our exploration of the mythos today, and expand it in our own corner of fantasy. Personally, I felt really inspired hearing about the blood-sucking teeth that Victor Hugo wrote about, and knew that I could make a very interesting Kraken expansion. So, I introduce the Vampire Kraken. I mean, let's be honest, ever since I mentioned it, I'm sure we were all thinking it. Imagine your gothic or dark fantasy campaign, each of your characters traversing the stormy waters on a small boat to an island offshore, a place they know to be the home and castle of an ancient vampire. They stumble across a wrecked ship on some rocks and decide to investigate, only to find the pasty white bodies of the crew scattered across the debris. It doesn't take much investigation to see suction cup marks along their skin, but what's surprising to find are puncture marks lining them as well. The party realizes that the bodies are drained of blood. They quickly look back at the ocean only a few dozen feet away, suddenly paranoid. Back at the boat, they see an ink cloud starting to form from beneath it, but this one being tinted blood red instead of black. They start running back to the ship to see a large fleshy red tentacle move up the starboard side. Instead of just the popping sound of suckers, there is also audible scraping sounds as thousands of teeth rake against the wood. The party suddenly realize the vampire has made a thrall of the Kraken. Now, if only that kind of monster existed. Well, it does. In the description of this video, available to you all for free. When I was thinking about what I could make for all of you to use, I first thought about a Kraken that combined all the forms that the Kraken took. A shape-shifting Kraken that had an octopus form, a whale form, a crab form, etc. And that would explain why there are so many opinions on what the mystical creature looked like. It's because it is a spirit or entity embodying the sea, and will manifest differently with its need. But I didn't feel like I needed to make an extra stat block for that. Your Dragon Turtle or Category 3 Krasis from Ravnica, or any other high CR water creature could fit the build just fine as a reflavor, as long as your players are aware of the weirdly changing myths of the sea monster. But then I thought, what we really need is that blood-sucking cephalopod. But tell me in the comments below how you would change or convey your own Kraken in your unique storytelling. And let me know if you like this kind of video, letting me know if I should take a look at more monsters compared to their historical counterpart in the future. This video has humbly been a part of Kraken Week. Like Shark Week, it is an entire week dedicated to underwater themes by your favorite content creators. An entire playlist has been created so you can take a look at all of the other creators participating in the project, including Treant Monk, Dungeon Dude, Super Geek Mike, Pack Tactics, Deficient Master, Cinderblock Sally, and a whole lot more. Also linked in the comments below. Go over and say the Cleric Corner sent you. Created by Pointy Hat and Jenny D, we invite you to join us next year and make it even bigger. If you like what you saw here, you can watch me expand the concepts of what makes a trickery cleric here, or dive into interesting fantasies like tiny people under the floorboards. In the meantime, go out there and make your worlds a better place. See ya.